The grand ballroom of the International Tourism Excellence Gala shimmered under a canopy of crystal chandeliers, their light fracturing into 1,000 prisms that danced across the sea of tuxedos and evening gowns. The air hummed with the low murmur of influential conversations, the clink of champagne flutes, and the occasional laughter from clusters of industry titans. At the center of it all stood the podium, bathed in a spotlight that seemed to elevate its occupant to godlike status. Marcus Hale, the visionary behind Hale Heritage Travels, gripped the gleaming Visionary Leader Award for the 4th consecutive year, his broad shoulders squared beneath an impeccably tailored black tuxedo. His smile was a masterpiece of charisma, wide and unwavering, as if he had personally invented the concept of success. Elena Ramirez Hale watched from her seat at table 12, her emerald silk gown pooling around her like a cascade of midnight waves. At 36, she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had long ago mastered the art of observation. Her rich brown skin glowed softly in the ambient light, and her dark eyes, framed by lashes that needed no enhancement, held the secrets of ancient forests. She was beautiful, yes, but it was the kind of beauty that demanded respect, not admiration. A presence that spoke of battles fought in boardrooms and back alleys of foreign cities, not catwalks or cocktail hours. Beside her sat Liam, their 9-year-old son, his small frame dressed in a miniature tuxedo that made him look like a pint-sized diplomat. His intelligent hazel eyes darted between the stage and his mother, absorbing the scene with the acuity of someone far older than his years. The applause thundered through the room, a tidal wave of adulation crashing against the walls. Marcus raised the award high, the gold-plated trophy catching the light like a captured star. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, his voice amplified by the sound system to fill every corner of the vast space. "Thank you. This honor is not just for me, but for the dream we have built at Hale Heritage Travels. 10 years ago, I started with a bold idea to revolutionize cultural tourism, to create experiences that don't just visit destinations, but immerse travelers in the soul of a place. Today, we operate in 42 countries, blending luxury with authenticity, and redefining what it means to connect with the world." The crowd erupted again, and a symphony of approval swelled with genuine enthusiasm. Elena joined in the clapping, her movements precise and measured, her palms meeting with a soft, controlled rhythm. But inside, a storm brewed. She remembered that bold idea all too well. It hadn't whispered in some late-night epiphany Marcus had while staring at a ceiling fan. No, it had been born in the quiet hours of her graduate studies in cultural anthropology, sketched out on yellow legal pads during research trips to remote villages in Peru and Morocco. She had mapped the ethical frameworks and the sustainable models that ensured tourism is enriched rather than exploited. Marcus had been there, of course, nodding along during their pillow talks, but it was Wylanapers into blueprints, late nights into leverage. Liam leaned toward her, his small hand brushing her arm, his voice a conspiratorial whisper barely audible over the fading applause. "Mom, why doesn't Dad talk about you when he says how he built the company? It's like you're invisible up there." The question pierced her like a needle through silk, sharp and unexpected. Liam's face, so earnest with its scattering of freckles and wide-eyed curiosity, mirrored her unspoken ache. At 9, he sensed the undercurrents, how the world's praise flowed around his father like a river, bypassing the woman who had diverted its course. Elena touched his cheek gently, her thumb tracing the soft curve of his jaw. Her smile was a shield, warm and reassuring, but her eyes flickered with something fiercer, a maternal fire kindled by his innocence. Sometimes, mi tesoro, the most important architect, works in the shadows. They designed the foundations so the towers could stand tall, but that doesn't make their work any less vital. Liam nodded slowly, his brow furrowing in that thoughtful way that reminded her of her childhood puzzles, but the seed of doubt had been planted. He glanced back at the stage, where Marcus was basking in the glow, shaking hands with dignitaries whose faces Elena recognized from her network of contacts. As Marcus continued his speech, weaving tales of entrepreneurial grit and innovative leaps, Elena's mind drifted to the fragments of their shared history. She recalled the night in their cramped apartment, pre-fame, when she had unrolled maps across their kitchen table, plotting routes that honored indigenous pathways rather than tourist traps. "I want travelers to leave feeling changed," she had told him, her voice alive with passion, not just photographed. Marcus kissed her and then called her his muse. The next day, he pitched her vision to investors as his own. It had worked spectacularly. Hale Heritage Travels exploded from a startup to a multi-million-dollar empire, its logo a stylized compass rose she had sketched herself. But with success came the slow erasure. Her name faded from emails, her face from press releases, until she became the elegant shadow at his side, the wife who kept the home fires burning while he conquered the world. The applause crested again as Marcus wrapped up, his voice dropping to a heartfelt timbre. "And I must thank my incredible wife Elena for being my anchor, inspiration, and heart, which keeps our family strong while I chase these dreams." The words landed like polished stones, smooth but heavy. Elena stood as expected, offering a gracious wave, her smile radiant under the lights. The crowd cooed appreciatively, but she felt the familiar crack in her chest, not of heartbreak, but of containment. Anchor, inspiration. She was the compass, the cartographer, who had navigated storms of cultural faux pas and regulatory mazes to make his voyages possible. Yet here she was, applauded for domestic grace, her genius tucked away like a state secret. They returned to their seats amid a flurry of congratulations. Marcus fielded them with effortless charm, his hand occasionally grazing Elena's shoulder in a gesture of proprietary affection. Liam fidgeted beside her, his small fingers twisting the edge of his napkin. "Mom, that doesn't sound right. You're not just the heart, you're the whole adventure." His words, so pure and unfiltered, wrapped around her like a lifeline. She squeezed his hand, her voice a murmur. "You see me, don't you, little explorer? That's more than enough for now." But as the evening unfolded, the now began to fracture. While Marcus networked with a cluster of European hotel magnates during the following cocktail hour, Elena's phone vibrated discreetly in her clutch. She slipped it out, glancing at the screen under the guise of checking the time. The message was from Dr. Sofia Mendez, the Director of Global Cultural Initiatives, an organization Elena had consulted with unofficially for years. "Elena, the board has been reviewing your protocols for ethical immersion. They're revolutionary. We'd like to discuss a direct partnership, bypassing intermediaries. Available for a private call tomorrow? Your discretion is appreciated." Elena's pulse quickened, a thrill chasing the edges of her composure. This wasn't flattery, it was an olive branch from the very pinnacle of her field. Sophia knew the truth, as did the whispers in the industry. Hale Heritage Thrive's crown jewel was Elena's mind, forged in doctoral theses and field immersions across continents. She typed a quick reply, "Yes, tomorrow works," discretion assured, and she tucked the phone away, her mind racing. Marcus was across the room, laughing at some anecdote, oblivious. But Liam noticed her shift, his eyes narrowing with that precocious insight. "Mom, everything okay?" "Just fine, amor." She ruffled his hair, but the lie tasted bitter. The message was a crack in the facade, a reminder that her world extended far beyond this gilded cage. As dessert service began, a distinguished figure approached their table, Victor Lang, Marcus's business partner and a silver-haired veteran of the tourism wars. His eyes, sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, fixed on Elena with unmistakable intent. "Mrs. Hale," he said, extending a hand that she shook firmly. "I've been meaning to speak with you. Your work on the Andean protocols last year? Masterful. The indigenous partnerships you brokered saved our launch. Is there a sidebar on expanding to Polynesia?" Marcus materialized at her elbow, his smile a touch too bright. "Victor, always poaching talent. Elena's got her hands complete with family, but I'll loop you in on the following strategy session." Victor chuckled politely, but his gaze remained on Elena. "Actually, Marcus, I was hoping for Elena's direct input. She's the one who understands the cultural threads that make these deals sing." The air thickened, a subtle shift that Liam picked up on immediately. His small body tensed beside her, ready to leap to her defense like a knight in Velcro sneakers. Elena felt it too, the weight of eyes turning their way, the unspoken question hanging like smoke. She could deflect, as she always had, redirecting praise back to Marcus to preserve the peace. Or she could step forward and claim the space that was hers by right. "I'd be delighted, Victor," she said, her voice steady as forged steel, sliding a business card from her clutch with the grace of a fencer drawing her blade. "Polynesia aligns perfectly with my research on oceanic heritage rights. Let's set something for next week." Victor beamed, pocketing the card with evident relief. "Perfect, I'll have my assistant confirm." Marcus's hand found her arm, his grip a fraction too firm, a silent warning wrapped in affection. "Darling, with the holidays." But Elena met his eyes, her smile unwavering, a quiet declaration of war. "The holidays can wait for progress, can't they?" As Victor retreated into the crowd, Liam grinned up at her, his whisper fierce with pride. "See, Mom, you're the real leader." The words ignited something deep within her, a spark that had smoldered for a decade. The gala swirled on, speeches giving way to dancing, but Elena felt the evening's accurate current, a tide pulling her from the shadows toward the light. Marcus, sensing the shift, steered her toward another group of admirers, his arm around her waist, a tether he thought unbreakable. But as they moved, her phone buzzed again, and another message from a contact in Tokyo echoed the same plea. "Elena, not Hale, we need you." Elena Ramirez made her first quiet vow under the chandelier's glow, as confetti rained down to celebrate another hollow triumph. The shadows had served their purpose. It was time to illuminate the truth. And when she did, Marcus's empire would tremble, not from applause, but from the revelation of its true architect. The first hints of dawn crept through the heavy velvet curtains of the Hale mansion, painting the home office in strokes of pale gold and lingering shadow. It was barely 5 in the morning, the kind of hour when the world held its breath, suspended between night's secrets and day's demands. Elena Ramirez Hale sat cross-legged on the thick Persian rug, her silk pajamas rumpled from a night of fitful sleep, a cashmere robe draped loosely over her shoulders like a warrior's cloak. Around her sprawled a fortress of banker's boxes, pulled from the dusty corners of the attic where forgotten histories gathered dust. Each box was a time capsule, heavy with the weight of 10 years of silent labor, now unearthed in the quiet rebellion of pre-dawn. She opened the first box with the reverence of an archaeologist at a sacred dig, her fingers tracing the edges of yellowed legal pads filled with her precise, looping handwriting. These were the birth certificates of Hale Heritage Travels, the original business plans she had drafted in the dim glow of a laptop screen while Marcus slept in the next room. Market analyses charting the rise of ethical tourism, sketches of immersive experiences that wove local traditions into luxury narratives, and financial projections that balanced profit with cultural preservation. All of it, her vision crystallized on paper, predating Marcus's so-called epiphany by months. She had poured her anthropology degree into these pages, drawing from field notes in the Amazon basin and negotiations with Maasai elders, creating a blueprint that turned tourism from exploitation to exchange. A soft creak on the hardwood floor pulled her from the trance. Liam appeared in the doorway, his pajamas twisted from sleep, his hair a wild halo of curls that caught the faint light. At 9, he moved with the stealth of a shadow, but his eyes, those sharp, questioning hazel orbs, betrayed his wakefulness. "Mom?" he whispered, rubbing one eye with a fist. "Why are you up so early? It's still dark outside." Elena's heart twisted at the sight of him, this small mirror of her relentless curiosity, standing in the threshold of truths too heavy for his shoulders. "Come here, mi vida," she said softly, patting the rug beside her, an invitation to the excavation, to share the burden of buried truths. Liam padded over, folding his lanky frame down next to her, his curiosity overriding any lingering sleepiness. He peered into the open box, his fingers hovering over a stack of folders labeled in her neat script. "Cultural Immersion Frameworks." "What's all this?" he asked, lifting one gingerly, as if it might crumble under his touch. Elena watched him, her chest tightening with pride and sorrow. "This," she began, her voice a gentle anchor in the quiet room, "is the real story of how Hale Heritage Travels came to be. Not the one your dad tells at award ceremonies, with him as the lone hero conquering the world. This is where it started, in these pages, my late nights and your abuela's old stories from Mexico that taught me about honoring roots." Liam flipped open the folder, his young eyes scanning the dense text with the speed of someone who devoured books like adventure maps. His brow furrowed as he absorbed the details. Protocols for respecting sacred sites in Bali, negotiation strategies for artisan cooperatives in Oaxaca. These revenue models funneled profits back to indigenous communities. "Mom," he said slowly, tracing a paragraph with his finger, "this says you wrote the whole sustainable model. Dad always brags about how he invented eco-luxury tours that changed the industry, but it's all your handwriting." No mention of him anywhere. The innocence in his voice sliced deeper than any accusation from an adult, a child's unvarnished logic exposing the fracture lines in their family facade. Elena reached out, tucking a stray curl behind his ear, her touch steady even as her pulse raced. "Yes, Tessero, I did. I spent months researching, traveling to places most people only dream of, learning languages and customs so we could build something honest. Your dad took those ideas and made them shine in the spotlight, but the foundation, that's mine." Liam's face darkened, a storm cloud passing over his features, the first flicker of betrayal in eyes that had always seen his father as infallible. "So, Dad's lying? To everyone? They say he's a big deal at school, but if you did all this," he trailed off, its weight pressing on his small chest. Elena pulled him closer, wrapping an arm around his shoulders, feeling the rapid beat of his heart against her side. Not lying, she hedged, choosing her words like steps across thin ice, more like reshaping the story to fit what people expect. "Men like your dad get the glory because it's easier that way. But you and I, we know the truth. And truths like this, they have a way of finding their voice." Her phone buzzed on the mahogany desk, insistent in the hush, pulling her gaze upward. The world beyond their gilded walls refused to sleep even at this ungodly hour. She reached for it, the screen illuminating her face with a cool blue glow. Messages flooded in, a digital tide from the invisible network she had woven over years of quiet diplomacy. One from a Quechua guide in Peru. "Elena, the new site tour is thriving because of your protocols. Let's discuss expanding to Machu Picchu variants." Another from a Maori cultural liaison in New Zealand. "Kia ora, your advice on treaty sensitivities saved our partnership. Direct call next week." And a third, from the Moroccan artisan guild she had championed. "Madame Ramirez, your translations opened doors we thought locked. We seek your counsel on youth apprenticeship programs." Each ping was a validation, a thread in the tapestry Marcus had claimed as his own weave. They addressed her not as Mrs. Hale, but as Elena Ramirez, the anthropologist and bridge builder, the woman whose name carried weight in boardrooms from Marrakesh to Mumbai. Liam watched her read, his head tilted. "Those are for you, right? Not Dad? Why do they all want to talk to you?" Elena set the phone down, her smile bittersweet. "Because they know, Liam. They know who listens, who learns, who turns words into worlds. Your dad is great at the big speeches, but these people? They need the details, the heart of it all, and that's what I give them." Emboldened, Liam dove deeper into the boxes, his small hands unearthing treasures like a pirate at a chest. He pulled out a photo album, its leather cover cracked from years of travel wear, and flipped it open on his lap. The images spilled out like memories unbound. Elena knee-deep in Andean mud, laughing with Quechua weavers as they demonstrated ancient dyeing techniques. Her in a Berber tent, sharing mint tea with elders while negotiating fair trade agreements. A candid shot of her scribbling notes during a Maori haka ceremony, her face alight with the fire of discovery. In every frame, she was the center, active and alive, not the poised ornament Marcus paraded at galas. "Look at you, Mom," Liam breathed, awe threading his voice. "You're everywhere, teaching, dancing, and talking to everyone. But Dad always says he did the complex parts, the deals and the risks." Elena's throat tightened, the album's pages blurring for a moment. She blinked it away, focusing on a photo of herself and Marcus in their early days, arms linked in front of a Peruvian ruin, both grinning with the reckless hope of dreamers. "I did the groundwork," she admitted softly. "I learned the languages, Spanish, Arabic, Quechua, so I could speak heart to heart, not through translators who missed the nuances. The risks, those were mine too, flying solo to places where one wrong word could shatter a community's trust. Marcus, he built on that, made it pretty for the investors. But without this, there'd be no empire." Liam closed the album, his expression hardening into something resolute, a child's justice stirring. "That's not fair. You built the castle, and he's taking all the crowns. Why do you let him?" The question hung between them, raw and demanding, forcing Elena to confront the mirror of her own complicity. She had let it happen, hadn't she? For the marriage, for the family, for the illusion of unity that kept Liam's world steady. But last night's gala, Victor's approach, and Sophia's message were cracks widening into chasms. "Fairness isn't given," she said finally, her voice gaining steel. "It's claimed when the moment's right, and maybe that moment is now." Her laptop chimed on the desk as if summoned by her words, an email notification slicing the air. Elena rose, leaving Liam to sift through more folders, and opened it. From their accountant, forwarded with a note of urgency. Marcus requested these for valuation review. Attachments followed, legal drafts outlining asset divisions, partnership dissolutions, and financial summaries that undervalued her contributions to mere consulting fees. Her blood ran cold as she scrolled, clauses minimizing her equity, framing Hale Heritage as Marcus's sole creation. He wasn't just erasing her from speeches, he was architecting her exile from the company she had birthed. Liam peered over her shoulder, his reading sharp as a hawk's. "Mom, is Dad trying to take the company from you? Erase you like you weren't even there?" The directness of it, from lips still soft with baby fat, shattered something in her. Elena deliberately closed the laptop, turning to cup his face in her hands. "Not take, exactly. But yes, he's trying to rewrite me out of the story. To make it seem like I was just the supportive wife." Tears pricked her eyes, but she held them back, modeling strength for the boy who watched her every move. Anger flickered in Liam's eyes, a spark of the man he'd become. "That's wrong. You showed me the proof. We can tell everyone." Elena pulled him into a fierce hug, breathing in the scent of his shampoo, the innocence she fought to shield. "We will, mi guerrero. But smart, like how I plan tours, step by step, leaving no path blocked." As the sun breached the horizon, flooding the office with warm light that danced across the scattered documents, Elena felt the shift solidify. This wasn't destruction, it was reclamation. The treasures she had buried were rising, and with them, her resolve. Her phone rang then, the screen flashing Victor Lang's name. She let it go to voicemail, but the message later confirmed it. "Elena, after last night, the board wants you to lead our Polynesia pivot. Independently." The world was aligning, doors creaking open where walls once stood. Liam helped her repack the boxes, his small hands steady now, fueled by purpose. "Are you scared, Mom?" he asked, stacking a folder with care. Elena paused, considering the fear that coiled in her gut, fear of shattering their family, of the fallout on Liam's heart. But it paled against the blaze of certainty, the thrill of wings unfurling after years clipped. "A little," she admitted, "but more excited. For the first time in so long, I feel like the adventure's just beginning. And you'll be my first partner in this, if you want." Liam's grin split wide, fierce and unyielding. "Always, Mom. Let's build something even bigger." As they finished, the rising sun cast long shadows that no longer felt confining. Elena Ramirez Hale, architect of empires, was no longer content with foundations. She was ready to claim the spires, and Marcus Hale would soon learn that buried treasures, once unearthed, could topple kingdoms built on sand. Snowflakes swirled lazily against the frosted windows of the Hale mansion, blanketing the sprawling estate in a deceptive hush of holiday cheer. By noon on Christmas Eve, the air inside thrummed with the orchestrated chaos of family arrivals, the crunch of tires on gravel giving way to bursts of laughter and the rustle of gift bags. The living room, with its towering evergreen strung with heirloom ornaments, served as the epicenter, where the scent of spiced cider mingled with the faint pine of the tree. But beneath the festive veneer, tensions simmered like embers under ash, waiting for the slightest breath to ignite. Elena moved through the space like a conductor in mid-symphony. Her emerald sweater dress a subtle echo of last night's gown, practical yet elegant for the day's demands. She had risen early after the pre-dawn revelations, transforming the kitchen into a global tapestry of flavors. Tagine simmering with Moroccan saffron from her first research trip, tamales steaming with masa from her grandmother's recipe, cornbread baking golden in the oven to honor her own roots. Each dish was more than sustenance. It was a silent manifesto, threads of the cultural diplomacy that had woven Hale Heritage travels into an empire. Liam trailed her like a loyal squire, his holiday sweater emblazoned with a cartoon compass, carrying platters with the seriousness of a 9-year-old entrusted with state secrets. The first wave of guests breached the threshold. Henry and Sophia Hale, Marcus's parents, sweeping in with the entitled grace of old money. Broad-shouldered and silver-haired Henry clutched a bottle of vintage scotch like a talisman. Sophia, her pearls gleaming against a cashmere twin set, air-kissed Elena, with lips painted the color of poinsettias. Marcus greeted them with bear hugs, his voice booming over the carols piping from hidden speakers. "Mom, Dad, perfect timing. Elena has outdone herself in the kitchen as always." Sophia turned her gaze to the spread on the sideboard, her smile a polite crescent that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Elena dear, this looks positively exotic. Lamb and, what is that, some sort of corn pudding? So ambitious for a holiday meal. Marcus always says you have a flair for the dramatic in your cooking." The comment landed like a velvet-gloved slap, the implication clear. Elena's efforts were charming but excessive, a woman's hobby rather than the strategic fusion of cultures that had fueled their son's success. Liam stiffened beside her, his small jaw setting in that protective tilt Elena knew too well. "It's not dramatic, Grandma," he said firmly, setting down a tray of empanadas with deliberate care. "Mom made it all from the places she visits for Dad's company. The tagine is from Morocco, where she learned the spices from real artisans. They trust her because she speaks their language." Henry chuckled, ruffling Liam's hair with paternal indulgence. "Out of the mouths of babes, eh? Your mother's quite the traveler in her own right, boy. But let's not bore the adults with kitchen tales. Where is the man of the hour?" Marcus appeared from the study, his shirt sleeves rolled up in feigned casualness, though Elena noted the faint crease in his brow, a remnant of whatever urgent calls had pulled him away that morning. He clapped Henry on the back, steering the group toward the fireplace where stockings dangled like expectant promises. The room filled quickly after that, relatives and close friends filtering in with wrapped boxes and seasonal pleasantries. Cousins swapped stories of ski trips. Aunts cooed over Liam, but the undercurrent pulled toward the business associates who arrived fashionably late. Victor Lang and his wife Clara, their entrance marked by the subtle clink of car keys from a luxury sedan. Victor made a beeline for Elena, bypassing Marcus, his handshake warm and lingering. "Elena, you radiant force," he said, his voice low to evade the festive din. "That tagine smells like it could broker peace treaties." Clara nodded enthusiastically, her eyes sparkling. "And those tamales? Divine. Victor tells me you're the secret sauce behind the Andean expansions. We'd love your thoughts on our upcoming Himalayan project sometime." Before Elena could respond, Marcus materialized, his arms slipping around her waist with possessive ease. "Victor, Clara, glad you could make it. Elena's culinary adventures are legendary, aren't they? But save the shop talk for after dessert. We've got eggnog waiting." Victor smiled, but it was the diplomat's smile, one that acknowledged the deflection without yielding. "Of course, though Elena, if you have a moment later," he trailed off, his meaning clear. and Clara shot her a conspiratorial wink before they drifted toward the tree. Elena felt Marcus's grip tighten fractionally, a silent Morse code of irritation, but he released her to play host, circulating with champagne flutes like a king dispensing favors. Liam, ever observant, sidled up to her, his whisper urgent. "See, Mom? Mr. Lang knows you're the expert. Why does Dad act like it's his idea?" Elena knelt to his level, her voice a soothing murmur amid the growing chatter. "Because some people need the spotlight to feel seen, mi corazon. But light like that can close their eyes to who's holding the lantern." She straightened, scanning the room where divides were etching like fault lines. Marcus's relatives clustered around him, regaling in tales of his latest award, their laughter a chorus of affirmation for the prodigal son. Sophia held court on the sofa, dispensing wisdom on family hierarchies with the authority of someone who had never questioned her own. But the business contingent gravitated toward Elena, drawn by invisible magnets of mutual respect. Victor discussing artisan ethics over cider, a marketing consultant probing her views on digital immersion, even Henry's golf buddy, a retired exec, cornering her about Southeast Asian protocols. The pattern sharpened as the afternoon wore on, conversations splintering into camps. Marcus's family saw Elena as the gracious ornament, complimenting her home management with faint condescension. "You've turned this place into a palace, dear," Sophia said, surveying the garlands with proprietary approval. "Marcus is so fortunate to have such a devoted wife keeping things running smoothly, while he handles the real pressures." Overhearing from his perch by the tree, Liam piped up without hesitation. "Mom handles the real pressures too, Grandma. She's the one who makes sure the tours don't hurt the places they visit. She taught me about reciprocity, like in that book on indigenous economies." Sophia blinked, her smile faltering into something closer to surprise. "Well, aren't you the little scholar? That's thoughtful of her." Elena interjected smoothly, her tone light but laced with intent. "Liam takes after his abuelita, Sophia. She always said true wealth is in the stories we preserve, not just the ones we sell." The words hung, a subtle reminder of the cultural core Marcus peddled as innovation. Henry, nursing his scotch, leaned in with the gruff curiosity of a man unused to women's insights. "Speaking of, Elena, I've heard murmurs at the club about those Hale tours. Some fellows think you had a hand in the operational side, more than just the pretty pictures." I set them straight. "You're the homefront hero. But what's the truth of it?" The question, phrased as banter, carried the weight of scrutiny, a probe into rumors that threatened Marcus's untarnished narrative. Elena met his gaze evenly, her smile unwavering. "I contribute where I can, Henry. Cultural bridges are my specialty, ensuring our adventures respect the lands they touch." Liam watched her, his eyes narrowing in silent challenge, the same disappointment from their dawn talk flickering. "Why not tell him everything, Mom, like the boxes showed?" Before she could respond, Marcus's laughter boomed from across the room, drawing eyes as he regaled a group with an embellished tale of a Moroccan negotiation. That's when I realized, Marcus was saying, his gestures were expansive, and the key to cracking international deals is reading the room, the cultural nuances, and the unspoken values. It's not just business, it's artistry. We don't just offer tours, we craft soul journeys. The guests nodded, entranced, but Elena heard the echo of her own words from a decade ago, her anthropology seminars distilled into his patter. A newcomer, a sharp-eyed consultant named Rita, whom Elena recognized from industry panels, raised a hand. "Fascinating, Marcus, but how did you develop that nuance? Formal training in anthropology, or was it all instinct?" Marcus paused, his smile a beat too long, searching for footing. "Instinct, mostly, honed by experience. An open mind, you know." Rita exchanged a glance with Victor, her expression skeptical, the kind that whispered she knew the score. Liam tugged Elena's sleeve, his voice a fierce whisper. "He's doing it again, Mom, telling your stories like they're his." The raw frustration in his tone, the betrayal etching lines on his young face, ignited something protective in Elena. She had shielded him from adult fractures, but no longer when the lies were carving him too. As the group dispersed toward the dining room for pre-dinner nibbles, Elena pulled Liam into the alcove by the grandfather clock, the tick-tock a metronome to their hushed words. "You're right," she admitted, her hand on his shoulder grounding them both. "I let it go because I thought peace was worth the price. But seeing it through your eyes, it's teaching you that silence is strength when it's surrender." Liam's nod was solemn, his small fist clenching. "Then don't surrender, Mom. Show them, like you showed me, this morning." The resolve settled in her like ballast, steadying the sway of doubt. From the dining room came Marcus's voice, launching into another anecdote, this one about Peruvian partnerships she had forged in blistering sun. Elena straightened, smoothing her dress. The feast she had prepared was now a weapon in waiting. The guests would gather soon for the full spread. Toasts would flow, and with them, opportunities for truths to surface. Victor caught her eye from across the room, nodding subtly toward the kitchen, an invitation to sidestep away from prying ears. She excused herself gracefully, Liam trailing as her shadow, and slipped into the butler's pantry where Victor waited, a glass of mulled wine in hand. "Elena," he said without preamble, his voice urgent but warm. "The boards are buzzing after the gala. Clients ask for you by name. Andean, Moroccan, and now whispers about Polynesia. They want direct lines, no filters. If you're ready to step out, we can make moves." Before she could reply, the door swung open, Marcus filling the frame, his expression a mask of joviality cracking at the edges. "Victor, you sly fox, can't even let a woman catch her breath on Christmas Eve?" Victor raised his glass unruffled. "Just admiring the chef, Marcus. Elena's tagine could launch 1,000 ships." Marcus forced a laugh, but his eyes on Elena held a storm, possessive and probing. "She's a wonder, isn't she? But family first today." The subtext was thunder, back in line. Yet as he herded them back to the fray, Liam squeezed her hand, his whisper a vow. "Your turn soon, Mom." The feast wasn't just food, it was the stage, and the disguised tensions were about to unmask themselves most spectacularly. The holiday cheer cloaked a gathering storm, and Elena, with her son's fierce alliance, was ready to let it break. Christmas Eve morning arrived with a deceptive serenity, the snow falling in fat, silent flakes that muffled the world outside the Hale mansion like a conspirator's whisper. Inside the kitchen, however, the air crackled with purpose, steam rising from copper pots and the sizzle of spices in cast-iron pans creating a symphony of anticipation. Elena Ramirez Hale had transformed the space into a command center of culinary warfare, her movements fluid and precise as she orchestrated the evening's feast. At 36, she wielded the knife with the same strategic grace she applied to international negotiations. Each chop a calculated step toward the confrontation she now knew was inevitable. The herb-crusted lamb, sourced from a sustainable Moroccan supplier she had personally vetted years ago, was roasted slowly in the oven, its aromas of cumin and preserved lemon evoking the sun-baked markets of Marrakesh, where she had first tasted the dish during a research immersion. Beside it simmered the handmade tamales, their corn husks wrapped tight around fillings of shredded chicken and green chilies, a nod to her Mexican heritage and the indigenous cooperatives in Oaxaca, whose weavers she had empowered through fair trade deals. The cornbread, golden and studded with jalapenos, baked in a skillet her grandmother had passed down, its recipe a bridge between her roots and the global empire she had architected. Even the spiced wine mulled on the stove carried layers of story, cinnamon from Sri Lankan plantations she had scouted, cloves from Indonesian partners who now formed the backbone of Hale Heritage Travel's supply chain. This was no mere meal, it was Elena's manifesto, plated proof of the invisible labor that had built their fortune. Liam hovered at the island counter, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, carefully folding linen napkins into intricate origami cranes, a skill Elena had taught him during a virtual lesson on Japanese cultural diplomacy. His small tongue poked out in concentration, the holiday sweater from yesterday now swapped for a simple red Henley that made him look even younger, more vulnerable in the face of the storm brewing. "Mom," he said, holding up a finished crane with pride, "do you think Grandma will notice how the folds match the tour logos?" You said symmetry builds trust. Elena paused in her chopping of cilantro, her knife hovering mid-air, and smiled at him, the warmth cutting through the chill of her resolve. Absolutely, mi artista. And when she does, she'll see the precision that makes our world turn, not just pretty patterns, but purposeful ones. Marcus descended the grand staircase at 9:30, his footsteps heavy on the polished oak, his appearance polished to a fault in chinos and a cashmere sweater that screamed effortless wealth. He paused in the doorway, inhaling deeply, his expression shifting from groggy satisfaction to the practiced appreciation of a man who knew his role in this domestic theater. He said, "Something smells like a five-star escape down here," sauntering over without offering a hand, his eyes flicking to his phone as he leaned against the counter. Moroccan nights meet Tex-Mex dreams, huh? You've outdone yourself again, Elena. He pecked her cheek absently, scrolling through emails, the screen's glow casting shadows on his face. Liam looked up from his napkin, his folding paused mid-crease, disappointment etching his features at the casual dismissal. "Dad, it's Christmas Eve. Aren't you going to help? Like to taste the wine or set the table?" Marcus ruffled his son's hair with that absent affection that had become his trademark, a gesture more habit than heart. "Business doesn't pause for tinsel, champ. Dad's got 3 calls lined up that keep the roof over our heads and the adventures rolling. You wouldn't want Santa showing up empty-handed, right?" He winked, but the charm fell flat against Liam's narrowing eyes, the boy sensing the priority ladder where family perched precariously low. Elena set down her knife, wiping her hands on a towel with deliberate slowness, her voice even but threaded with curiosity. "What kind of calls can't wait one day, Marcus? Legal reviews, partnership tweaks, or something more personal?" She watched him closely, the dawn discoveries from the banker's boxes sharpening her gaze, turning casual inquiry into a probe. Marcus hesitated, his thumb pausing on the screen, a flicker of unease crossing his features before he masked it with a chuckle. "Just the usual grind, sweetheart. Contracts for the new year, some investor chats that could lock in 7 figures. Nothing for you to fret over. You focus on the magic here. I'll handle the spreadsheets." The phrase, "just the usual," grated like sand in a gearbox, a deflection Elena had heard 1,000 times, each iteration eroding a little more of her patience. She resumed chopping, the blade thudding rhythmically against the board, a counterpoint to the tension thickening the air. Liam, undeterred, pressed on, his voice rising with the injustice of childhood clarity. "But Dad, last night at the gala, Mr. Lang wanted to talk to Mom about Polynesia. Real work, not spreadsheets. Why do you always say it's your job?" Marcus straightened, his smile tightening into something sharper. "Because it is, Liam. Mom handles the cultural flair, the heartwarming stuff that makes clients smile. I close the deals and sign the checks. That's how teams work. She dreams, I deliver." Elena felt the words like a slap, not for their inaccuracy, she had long armored against such diminishment, but for the way they landed on Liam, whose face crumpled in quiet outrage. The boy's hands balled into fists around a half-folded napkin, crumpling the crane into a sad, defeated lump. "That's not a team, Dad," he muttered, barely audible over the hum of the oven timer. "That's you taking all the credit." Marcus blinked, caught off guard by the rebellion in his son's tone, but before he could retort, his phone trilled insistently, saving him from the unfamiliar terrain of accountability. "Duty calls," he said, clapping Liam on the shoulder a touch too hard. "Be suitable for Mom," and with that, he vanished into his study, the door clicking shut like a verdict. The kitchen fell into a charged silence, broken only by the soft bubble of the tamales. Liam stared at the ruined napkin, his shoulders slumping, and Elena crossed to him in 3 strides, enveloping him in a hug that smelled of cilantro and resolve. "Hey," she murmured into his curls, "it's okay to feel mad. That's your compass pointing true north." He pulled back, eyes glistening but fierce. "Why does he do that, Mom? Act like you're just the helper after everything in those boxes?" Elena sighed, guiding him to a stool, her heart aching with the echo of her dawn turmoil. "Because some men build walls around their egos, mi valiente, they think sharing the view weakens them. But you're learning to climb them instead." As if to underscore the fracture, Elena's phone lit up on the counter, a cascade of notifications blooming like digital fireworks. She glanced at them while stirring the wine, each one a lifeline from the world Marcus sought to gatekeep. First, here is a text from Dr. Sofia Mendez. "Elena, Our board is thrilled about the direct partnership. Your immersion models could redefine global standards. Call post-holidays? Then, from the Oaxacan cooperative lead, Senora Ramirez, the artisan program thrives thanks to your frameworks. Proposing expansion, your guidance is essential. And finally, a voice note from the Maori liaison, his accent warm and urgent. Elena, what treaty protocols did you draft? Gold. Community leaders want you to consult independently. Compensation reflects your impact. Each message bypassed Hail Heritage entirely and was addressed to Elena Ramirez, the force whose name evoked trust in circles Marcus could only orbit. Liam peeked at the screen, his curiosity reigniting.
See? They all want you, Mom, not Dad. Why pretend? Elena pocketed the phone, her smile wry as she handed him a fresh napkin to refold, because pretending kept the peace. Once. But peace built on half-truths crumbles, and after this morning, the foundations are shifting. From the study drifted Marcus' raised voice, muffled but unmistakable, the aggressive timbre he reserved for threats to his domain. I don't care what she suggested, he snapped, audible through the door. All partnerships root through me. She's insightful, sure, but I'm the CEO, no contracts without my sign-off. Elena froze, her spoon midway to the pot, the words confirming the lawyer's drafts from dawn, not expansion, but exclusion. A calculated severing of her ties to the empire she had birthed. Liam heard it too, his eyes widening in horror. He's talking about you, isn't he? Trying to lock you out. Elena moved to the door, not to eavesdrop but to assess the venom in his tone, the way it would color the evening's gathering. The call escalated, Marcus pacing now, his shadow flickering under the door. Listen, if they want her expertise, they deal with Hail Heritage. Direct lines, over my dead body. The finality chilled her, but also forged her will, turning doubt to diamond. She returned to the counter, pulling Liam into a quiet conference. He's scared, she explained softly. The world's starting to see me, and that threatens his story. But we have the truth, remember? Those boxes? They're our shield. Liam nodded, his resolve mirroring hers, and together they plated appetizers, the act a ritual of alliance. As afternoon shadows lengthened, guests arrived in waves. Henry and Sophia first, their coats shedding snow like discarded illusions, followed by Victor and Clara, then a trickle of cousins and friends. Sophia surveyed the kitchen with her usual blend of approval and critique. My, Elena, such a production. Marcus must adore coming home to this. Liam, emboldened, countered immediately. It's not just for coming home, Grandma. Mom says food tells stories that make Dad's tours special. Sophia laughed, a tinkling sound laced with patronage. How precocious. Yes, dear, little ways to support the big picture. Elena felt Liam's hand slip into hers under the counter, a silent pact, as she replied with newfound edge. Actually, Sophia, these stories are the big picture. Without them, there's no tour worth taking. The room paused, the implication rippling, but Marcus emerged then, all charm and redirection, herding everyone to the living room with trays in hand. As the group settled, laughter masking the undercurrents, Elena caught Victor's eye across the space. He mouthed, "Later?" And she nodded, the promise of unfiltered alliance a spark in the powder keg. Sensing the drift, Marcus launched into host mode, but his glances toward Elena held suspicion, the first cracks in his facade. Liam leaned close, his whisper a battle cry. Your move now, Mom. The taste of betrayal lingered in the air, sharp as chilies, but Elena savored it. For in its bitterness lay the clarity to strike true. The feast awaited, with it, the unveiling of flavors far more potent than any spice. The raw, unyielding truth. The dining room of the Hale mansion glowed under the soft flicker of beeswax candles, their flames dancing in crystal holders that cast elongated shadows across the mahogany table. Christmas Eve had deepened into evening, the snow outside now a relentless curtain that isolated the gathering from the world beyond, turning the feast into a pressure cooker of simmering truths. Elena Ramirez Hale had outdone herself in the table's orchestration. Moroccan brass chargers gleamed beside Irish crystal glasses. Mexican hand-painted ceramics nestled against Italian linen napkins. each element a deliberate fusion of the cultures she had bridged in silence. The air was thick with the symphony of scents, lamb tagine yielding to the earthiness of spiced wine, tamales unfurling steam laced with chilly heat, cornbread's buttery warmth grounding it all. This was no ordinary holiday spread, it was Elena's arsenal, plated and waiting for the moment to fire. Marcus presided at the head of the table like a benevolent monarch, his posture relaxed yet commanding, the cashmere sweater traded for a crisp button-down that accentuated his broad frame. He spooned a generous portion of tagine onto his plate, his voice rising above the clink of silverware to claim the conversational throne.
"You know, this reminds me of that groundbreaking deal in Marrakesh," he began, his eyes sweeping the guests with the charisma of a seasoned storyteller. "We were deep in negotiations with the Artisan Guild, high-stakes stuff, and I had this epiphany about blending their traditions into our luxury packages. Turned a potential disaster into our bestseller." The relatives nodded appreciatively, Henry chuckling into his napkin, Sophia beaming with maternal pride. Seated midway down, Victor Lang forked a tamale with polite interest, but his glance toward Elena held a layer of knowing. Liam, wedged between Elena and Clara, chewed thoughtfully on a piece of cornbread, his hazel eyes fixed on his father with the intensity of a juror sizing up testimony. He had mastered the art of selective silence at 9, but tonight, the weight of the morning's discoveries pressed too heavily on his small shoulders. He swallowed, set down his fork with deliberate care, and cleared his throat in a way that amplified his voice just enough to cut through the hum. "Dad," he said, his tone casual but edged with steel. "Tell them about the ceremony in Morocco, you know, the one where Mom learned the traditional welcoming dance. And how did the village elders say she had the spirit of a true diplomat?" The room stilled, forks pausing mid-air, wineglasses hovering near lips. Marcus's narrative faltered, his spoonful of lamb suspended as a flicker of irritation crossed his features, swiftly masked by his trademark grin. The words landed like a pebble in a still pond, ripples spreading through the assembled faces. Surprise from the cousins, curiosity from Clara, a subtle arch of Victor's brow. Liam's challenge was innocent in delivery, the wide-eyed earnestness of a child sharing a favorite memory, but it carried the precision of a dart, aimed at the heart of Marcus's embellished lore. Elena felt a surge of pride mingled with trepidation, her hand brushing Liam's under the tablecloth, a silent anchor in the sudden hush. Marcus recovered smoothly, his laugh a warm deflection that filled the space like expanding foam. "Ah, that trip," he said, resuming his scoop with exaggerated nonchalance. "What an adventure! What are the cultural dives we take for Hale heritage? Unmatched. The elders were gracious hosts. The whole experience solidified our North African portfolio." He popped the bite into his mouth, chewing as if to punctuate the end of the topic, his eyes darting to Henry for affirmation. But undaunted, Liam leaned forward, his napkin crumpled from earlier tucked into his pocket like a talisman. "Yeah, but Dad, you didn't mention how Mom practiced the dance for weeks. She learned Arabic phrases, too, to talk to the artisans directly. That's how they shared the secret spice mixes no other tour knows about. Right, Mom?" Every head swiveled toward Elena, the candlelight catching the anticipation in their eyes, transforming the dinner into a theater of revelation. Sophia's fork hovered, her pearls shifting with a nervous swallow. Henry cleared his throat, suddenly fascinated by his plate. Clara suppressed a smile, while Victor leaned back, arms crossed in evident support. The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring, pregnant with the choice Elena had wrestled with since dawn. She could laugh it off and redirect to Marcus's glory, as she had 1,000 times, preserving the fragile peace for Liam's sake. Or she could honor her son's courage and step into the light he had cracked open for her. Elena met Liam's gaze, seeing the plea there not for validation, but for justice, the raw faith of a boy who believed in fairness because no one had yet taught him otherwise. She set down her glass, the crystal chiming softly, and let her voice emerge steady, laced with the quiet authority of reclaimed ground. "Liam remembers everything," she said, her smile soft but her eyes alight with the fire of memory.
He has a gift for the details that make stories live, not just the grand gestures, but the quiet preparations that hold them up. The room leaned in, the collective breath held, as if sensing the pivot from anecdote to authenticity. Victor seized the opening, his voice warm with genuine curiosity, directed squarely at Elena. "I'd love to hear more about those artisan ties, Elena. Our clients crave that depth of authentic connections beyond the surface. How did you nurture those?" The question was a lifeline, acknowledging her as the source, not a footnote to Marcus's tale. Marcus shifted in his seat, his napkin twisted under the table, but Elena felt the mantle settle, heavy with the significance of a decade's deferred spotlight. "The relationships with the guild weren't built in a single negotiation," she began, her words flowing like a river long dammed. "They grew over years of listening, first learning the language, not just words, but the rhythms of their stories, the protocols that honor without extracting." She paused to sip her wine, the spiced notes grounding her, and continued, her voice gaining momentum. "I spent months in Marrakesh, not as a tourist but as a student living with families, participating in the dye rituals, understanding how a single misstep in spice blending could offend generations. The elders didn't hand over secrets, they tested trust, and when they saw I came to give as much as take, sharing market data on sustainable sourcing, advocating for their youth in global fairs, the doors opened. The secret mixes? They came with invitations to their homes, not boardrooms." Liam beamed beside her, his small fist pumping under the tablecloth, while Clara murmured,
"Remarkable,"
her eyes wide with admiration. Marcus's jaw tightened imperceptibly, his fork scraping the plate with too much force, making the sound a discordant note in the symphony. "Elena's always had that natural intuition for the cultural side," he interjected, his tone light but laced with condescension. The phrase, natural intuition, a velvet cage meant to diminish her scholarship to feminine whimsy. "She's got an eye for the poetic touches that make deals memorable." The guests shifted, the undercurrent of skepticism rippling. Rita, the consultant from earlier, exchanged a loaded glance with Victor. Even Sophia's smile wavered, her maternal loyalty clashing with the evident depth in Elena's recounting. Henry, ever the patriarchal arbiter, leaned forward, his voice gruff with the authority of boardroom battles. "Hold on, son. I've been hearing scuttlebutt at the club about those Hale protocols. Some say Elena's fingerprints are all over the operations, deeper than the pretty wrappings. I brushed it off as gossip, but now..." He trailed off, eyeing Elena with newfound respect, the implication clear. The rumors weren't fluff, they were blueprints. Marcus's face flushed, a vein pulsing at his temple. But before he could pivot, Sophia rushed in, her voice a defensive trill. "Oh, Henry, don't stir pots on Christmas. Elena supports Marcus beautifully, as a good wife should. He's the visionary. She adds the warmth." The assertion hung like overripe fruit, ready to burst, dividing the table into factions. Marcus's kin nodding in reflexive solidarity, the business minds leaning toward Elena with intrigued silence. Liam's hand found hers again, squeezing with urgent solidarity, his whisper barely audible. "Tell them, Mom, the whole thing." Elena felt the weight of his challenge, not just words but a legacy, teaching him that voices silenced could roar when amplified by love. She said, her voice carrying a new timbre of unyielding steel that straightened spines around the table. There might be some confusion about where that warmth and vision originate. Marcus's eyes snapped to hers, alarm flashing behind his polished facade, the first real fracture in his composure. "Sweetheart," he said quickly, reaching for her hand in a gesture of affectionate control, "perhaps we can save the deep dives after the Yule log. This is family time, not a pitch meeting." But Liam, sensing the deflection, piped up again, his voice ringing over the clatter. "No, Dad, I want to hear Mom tell it. She's the one who knows the languages, the dances, the why behind everything. You always say you're the captain, but she's the one who draws the maps." The boy's words ignited the room, a spark to dry tinder, guests murmuring in shock and dawning realization. Victor nodded emphatically, Clara whispered, "Hear her out," and even Henry grunted approval, his scotch forgotten. Marcus's grip on Elena's hand tightened, a warning wrapped in warmth. Still, she slipped free gracefully, reaching for the slim folder she had tucked beside her chair, a compilation of key emails and sketches from the boxes, her emergency beacon. "Oh, I don't think it's boring at all," she replied, opening the folder with the calm of a general unfurling battle plans. "In fact, these details, they're the most compelling chapter in the Hale heritage story." The atmosphere shifted palpably, conversations halting as forks lowered, attention locking onto Elena like spotlights on a stage. Marcus made a final, desperate lunge for narrative control. "Elena, darling, the goose is getting cold. Let's not." But Liam's eyes sparkled with unbridled excitement, his small frame vibrating with the thrill of impending justice. "Yes, Mom, show them the maps you drew." The support from her son, this fierce little ally who had challenged the giant first, propelled her forward. She was done with shadows. Tonight, under the guise of holiday cheer, the child's challenge had cracked the dam, and the flood of truth was rushing in, ready to reshape the empire around the table. The dining room held its collective breath as the last echoes of Liam's challenge faded into the candlelit hush, the flames guttering slightly as if sensing the seismic shift beneath the polished surface. Elena Ramirez Hale sat poised at the table's midpoint, her folder open like a book of spells, its pages whispering upheaval promises. The feast sprawled before them, half-devoured plates of tagine and tamales, cooling in the charged air, the spiced wine in crystal goblets catching the light like trapped rubies. Marcus Hale tore his napkin with white-knuckled force, his charismatic facade cracking at the seams. Still, the evening's ritual demanded continuation, and he seized it like a lifeline. With deliberate slowness, Marcus pushed back his chair, the scrape of wood on wood a prelude to performance. He rose, all 6 feet of him unfolding with the fluid confidence of a man who had commanded stages from Tokyo boardrooms to Moroccan souks, his button-down shirt untucked just enough to suggest approachability. He lifted his champagne flute in one hand, the golden liquid fizzing softly, bubbles rising like unspoken ambitions. The other hand gestured expansively, encompassing the table, the room, and the empire he believed unassailable. He intoned, "Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends," his voice rolling out rich and resonant, laced with the practiced timbre of 1,000 toasts. "To this season of renewal, the bonds that sustain us, and the bold new chapter unfolding for Hale Heritage travels." The phrasing was artful, a velvet curtain drawn over the blade beneath, celebratory yet laced with finality, hinting at endings masked as beginnings. The guests raised their glasses in reflexive unison, a murmur of "here" rippling around the table, Henry nodding gruffly, Sophia's eyes misting with pride. Liam lowered his flute untouched, his small face a mask of confusion, the boy's intuition snagging on the undercurrent like a hook in silk. Victor paused mid-sip, his sharp eyes flicking to Elena, while Clara whispered something to Rita, the consultant's brow furrowing. Elena felt the words coil in her gut, cold and serpentine, the dawn's legal drafts resurfacing in her mind. Not renewal, but erasure, a chapter where she and Liam were footnotes, excised for Marcus's solo narrative. Marcus warmed to his theme, his free hand sweeping the air as if painting visions on the candle smoke, his features animating with the fervor of a prophet unveiling gospel. He continued that this year has been nothing extraordinary, his gaze sweeping the assembly, lingering just a beat too long on Elena's composed form. 4 Visionary Leader Awards in a row, breakthroughs in 42 markets, and partnerships have positioned us as the gold standard in cultural immersion. And now, as the new year dawns, I'm thrilled to share that we're on the cusp of something even greater. A strategic alliance that will catapult Hale Heritage into uncharted territories, focusing laser-sharp on innovation and global dominance. He paused for effect, the silence stretching like a breath, glasses hovering in anticipation. Elena's pulse quickened, her fingers tightening on the folder's edge, the euphemisms ringing hollow against the evidence of his betrayal. Liam shifted beside her, his voice piping up with the unfiltered directness of youth, cutting through the theater like a knife through fog. What kind of new chapter, Dad? Does it mean more trips? Or something else? The question hung, innocent yet piercing, the boy's hazel eyes locking onto his father's with a mix of hope and dawning wariness. Marcus's smile strained at the corners, the expression of a performer interrupted mid-act, unused to improvisation from his audience. He replied just the exciting grown-up stuff, son, ruffling Liam's hair with forced joviality, though his hand lingered a fraction too long, a subtle assertion of paternal control. Partnerships, expansions, things that'll make all our adventures even bigger. Boring details for after dessert, but Elena, her resolve forged in the pre-dawn fire, would not yield the stage so easily. She set her glass down with a soft clink, the sound amplified in the hush, her voice emerging calm but threaded with unyielding intent. Actually, Marcus and Liam deserve to know. And so does everyone here. What exactly does this bold new chapter entail for our family? For the company we've all invested in? Her words landed like a gauntlet, phrased as support but laced with challenge, the steel beneath her velvet tone drawing surprised glances from around the table. Sophia's pearls clicked nervously. Henry's scotch paused midway to his lips. And Victor leaned forward, elbows on the table, his interest palpable. Marcus's eyes flicked to hers, a warning flashing in their depths. Stay in your lane, but the momentum had shifted, the toast's warmth curdling into confrontation. He cleared his throat, his posture stiffening, the king sensing the first tremors in his throne room. Elena, let's discuss the intricacies privately. This is a celebration, not a no, she interjected gently, her smile unwavering, a blade sheathed in silk. Transparency honors the season. After all, if it's such an exciting opportunity, why keep it shrouded? The guests murmured agreement, Clara nodding emphatically, Rita whispering to her neighbor. Marcus's jaw worked, calculation warring with ego. Still, the alcohol in his veins and the pressure of the spotlight pushed him forward, his voice dropping to a more intimate timbre, ostensibly confiding in the circle. Very well. The truth is, this alliance demands absolute focus and dedication to core competencies. I've realized I've been stretched thin, balancing operations, family, the domestic, complexities that dilute my edge. The word complexities slithered out, a poisoned dart aimed at Elena's heart. The euphemism for her existence, her contributions reframed as burdens. Liam's flute clattered to the table, his face paling as understanding dawned. The boy's small hands balling into fists. "What do you mean, complexities, Dad?" he demanded, his voice cracking with hurt. "Like Mom? Like me?" The directness shattered the room, tears welling in his eyes, the raw vulnerability of a child confronting parental betrayal. Sophia gasped, hand to her chest, while Henry shifted uncomfortably, the patriarchal shield cracking under his grandson's plea. Marcus knelt slightly, reaching for Liam, but the boy recoiled, scooting closer to Elena. "Easy, champ," Marcus soothed, though his tone grated with impatience. "It's not about you. It's about priorities. This partnership is with industry heavyweights who value undivided attention. I've sacrificed enough potential juggling homefront duties. Time to streamline, elevate." Elena's blood ran cold, the legal drafts flashing in her mind. Asset divisions that gutted her equity, clauses erasing her role, a future where she was alimony, not architect. "So," she said, her voice steady, but eyes blazing with controlled fury, "you're saying Liam and I are the dilutions, the obstacles to your elevation?" The accusation ignited the powder keg, faces around the table registering shock. Victor's jaw tightening in disapproval, Clara's hand covering her mouth, even Sophia's loyalty fracturing into confusion. Marcus straightened, his mask slipping, revealing the ugly underbelly of resentment honed over years of borrowed glory. "I've been patient, Elena," he snapped, his volume rising, the champagne fueling his righteousness. "Trying to include you despite the lack of formal training, the focus on your little cultural hobbies over real commerce. Successful men need partners who amplify, not anchor to mediocrity. Hale Heritage succeeded despite the distractions, not because of them. The words detonated, each syllable a grenade lobbed at Elena's legacy, diminishing her degrees, her immersions, her empire building to whimsy and weight. Gasps rippled outward, Henry's face darkening with outdated views, now turned inward. Victor staring at his plate in disturbed silence. Rita murmuring outrage under her breath. Liam burst into tears, burying his face in Elena's side, his small body shaking with sobs that tore at her soul. Sophia reached futilely toward her son, her voice a whisper. "Marcus, that's enough." Not in front of the boy. But, intoxicated by his confession, Marcus pressed on, pulling an envelope from his inner pocket, with the flourish of a magician revealing his trick. He said to make this transition smooth, sliding the thick packet across the table toward Elena. "I've had our attorneys prepare the necessary documents. Clean breaks foster fresh starts." He tapped the envelope, his eyes gleaming with misplaced triumph. "Divorce papers and filings affirming my sole ownership of Hale Heritage Travels and all assets. The settlement's generous, considering your contributions." The silence that followed was abyssal, a void swallowing the room whole, the candle's flames seeming to dim in sympathy. Liam's sobs choked off into stunned hiccups, his wide eyes fixed on the papers like a death warrant for his world. Elena stared at the envelope, its crisp edges mocking her, then lifted her gaze to Marcus's expectant face, smug with the assumption of her capitulation. The table watched, transfixed, as something transformed in her. Not defeat, but a glacial power uncoiling, years of suppressed brilliance surging to the surface. She placed her hand over Liam's, steadying him, then reached for her folder with the other, her voice emerging not in rage but in the lethal calm of inevitability. "Marcus, you've just made the gravest error of your life, and I'm about to demonstrate precisely why." With measured grace, she laid her folder beside his papers, the contrast stark, his sterile legalese against her living legacy of sketches and contracts. "Before you sever the complications from your path," she said, her words carrying the weight of judgment, "you ought to grasp what those complications have wrought for your supposed success." Marcus's confidence wavered, a shadow crossing his features as realization dawned. The queen he sought to dethrone held the scepter all along, and his poisoned toast had only awakened the dragon. The room leaned in, the feast forgotten, as Elena prepared to pour the antidote of truth, ensuring his empire would choke on its own venom. The envelope of divorce papers lay on the mahogany table like a venomous serpent, its crisp edges glinting under the candlelight. A silent accusation amid the wreckage of Marcus Hale's poisoned toast. Once a haven of holiday warmth, the dining room now pulsed with the raw electricity of revelation, the air thick with the mingled sense of cooling tagine and unspoken recriminations. Guests sat frozen in their finery, forks abandoned, eyes darting between the embattled couple like spectators at a gladiatorial tilt. Liam clutched Elena's hand under the tablecloth, his small fingers digging in with desperate ferocity, his tear-streaked face a heartbreaking emblem of the collateral damage. Sophia's pearls trembled against her throat, Henry's scotch forgotten in his fist, while Victor Lang's gaze burned with the quiet fury of a man witnessing corporate sabotage unfold in domestic guise. Elena Ramirez Hale regarded the papers for a long moment, her expression not of shattered fragility, but of the serene calculation of a chess master 3 moves ahead. 10 years of swallowed accolades, of blueprints credited to another, of midnight vigils over field notes while Marcus slumbered. These had forged her not into a victim, but a vault of unassailable truths. She released Liam's hand gently, murmuring, "Mi valiente, stay strong," before sliding her folder forward with the precision of a diplomat laying down terms of surrender. Not for Marcus, but for the empire he had co-opted. "Before we entertain notions of elimination," she began, her voice a silken thread woven with steel, carrying across the table like a verdict from on high. "It behooves us all to clarify the architecture of Hale Heritage Travels. Who truly laid its foundations, and on what bedrock it stands?" She opened the folder with ceremonial care, the first document unfurling like a banner of conquest. A yellowed legal pad page dated a quarter century before Marcus's famed epiphany. its margins dense with her looping script. "This," she said, tapping the header, "Sustainable Immersion Model, Ethical Tourism Blueprint," is the genesis. Penned in the quiet hours of my doctoral research, drawing from immersions in Peruvian highlands and Moroccan medinas. The core philosophy, luxury that uplifts rather than extracts, revenue streams looped back to local stewards, was crystallized here, months before any pitch to investors. My anthropological training informed every line: sacred site access protocols, artisan equity frameworks, and projections balancing profit with preservation. Not a spark of inspiration from a sleepless night, as the legend goes, but a scaffold erected brick by brick. Marcus's face drained of color, his earlier triumph curdling into pallor, but he lunged for denial like a drowning man at driftwood. "Elena, darling, those are mere brainstorming jottings from our early days," he interjected, his voice pitching higher, laced with the false bonhomie of cornered salesmanship. "I refined them into the viable enterprise, the branding, the scaling, the vision that secured funding. Surely you don't mean to." Sophia nodded vigorously, her maternal instinct overriding the evidence before her. "Yes, dear, Marcus made it real. Your notes were the seed, he planted the tree." Elena's smile was a crescent moon, serene and cutting, as she flipped to the next page. A dense schematic of cultural sensitivity protocols, cross-referenced with Islamic financial tenets, Hindu calendrical alignments, and Andean reciprocity laws. If refinement was his gift, Marcus, then elucidate this for our guests. How does the framework reconcile Sharia-compliant payments with Quechua Pachacuti cycles, while ensuring indigenous land tenure under ILO Convention 169? The challenge hung, a gauntlet of arcane specificity that silenced the room, the guests' eyes widening at the labyrinthine depth. Marcus's mouth opened, closed, his expertise, a veneer of charisma over borrowed briefs, crumbling under scrutiny. He could dazzle with overviews and parrot her insights in keynotes, but dissect the machinery? That was her domain, honed in dusty archives and elder councils. Henry cleared his throat, his voice gruff with reluctant admiration, breaking the stunned hush. "Let Elena unpack the technicals. I've closed deals in my day, but that's no small feat." Victor nodded, leaning forward with the intensity of a boardroom ally. "Indeed, those protocols, they've become industry gospel. Elena, if you would." Emboldened, she obliged, tracing the annotations like a conductor's baton. "This section mandates phased community consent for tour routes, cross-verified against local governance. Berber tribal councils in Arabic, Quechua Islas in Spanish. Breaches trigger automatic revenue halts, funneled to reparative funds. It's not intuition. Engineered equity is tested in field trials from Bali to Bolivia. The assembly absorbed it, faces shifting from polite interest to dawning awe. Clara's eyes sparkling with feminist solidarity, Rita jotting notes on her napkin, even Sophia's skepticism fracturing into curiosity. Wiping his tears with the back of his hand, Liam straightened beside her, his whisper fierce. "See, Dad? Mom's the builder." Marcus's retort died unspoken, his napkin shredded in his lap, as Elena delved deeper, unveiling a sheaf of correspondence. A mosaic of emails in 6 languages, timestamps spanning continents. She continues, her voice gaining timbre, chronicling relational sinews of our expansion. Direct dispatches to cultural ministries, artisan syndicates, and heritage boards across 5 continents. All initiated, negotiated, and sealed by me. Arabic accords with the Moroccan Guild of Tangier, yielding our flagship Sahara immersions. Spanish treaties with Peruvian INC, unlocking Andean exclusives. Mandarin memos to Beijing's Tourism Bureau, threading Silk Road revivals. She splayed select printouts across the damask cloth, signatures bold in her hand, carbon copies blind to Marcus's oversight. Behold the Moroccan exchange, conducted verbatim in Darija, securing spice heirlooms and youth apprenticeships that birthed our bestseller packages. Or the Peruvian thread, invoking UNDRIP clauses to safeguard Machu Picchu access, the deals Marcus touts in his victory laps. Each missive is a testament to linguistic fluency. Arabic, Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Mandarin. Not parlor tricks, but portals forged in immersion schools and solitary travels. The guests pored over them, Victor tracing a clause with reverence. Elena, these aren't partnerships. They're masterpieces of diplomacy. How many languages did you master for this? 8. Conversationally, she replied modestly, with basics in 12 more for courtesy's sake. Respect demands direct address, not filtered through intermediaries who dilute intent. Liam, beaming now, piped up unbidden. Tell them about the haka, Mom. How did you learn it from the Maori elders, who gifted you the carved pendant for sealing the treaty? The boy's interjection, raw with pride, drew chuckles of affection, but it underscored the generational torch, from her hidden labors to his unfiltered truth. Elena obliged, recounting the Wellington windswept ceremony, her voice painting the scene, the thunder of feet, the challenge of breath, the pendant's weight as a symbol of pacts unbroken. Marcus's business partner, Victor, stared at the array with the reverence of a convert, his voice low but carrying. Elena, are you implying you orchestrated every international thread? The groundwork, the cultivation, the sustainment. Yes, she affirmed, her gaze locking onto Marcus's, unblinking. Marcus excels at closings, the flourish of signatures under spotlights. But the soil? The roots? Mine. The table erupted in murmurs, the tide turning palpably. Henry's grunt of approval, Clara's whispered brilliance to Rita, Sophia's conflicted fidgeting. To hammer the fiscal nail, Elena unveiled spreadsheets, line graphs spiking in emerald and azure, correlating her brokered alliances to revenue streams. Over 5 years, these cultural conduits generated 87% of Hale Heritage's profits. Not marketing magic, but relational rigor. Sophia, clinging to denial, ventured a feeble parry, but surely Marcus's leadership, the branding, the pitches, turned your insights into gold. Elena's response was surgical generosity, her tone velvet over iron. Indubitably, he has been exemplary as herald. Eloquent mouthpiece for paradigms he did not pioneer, affable front for frameworks he did not frame, assured avatar for acumen he did not accrue. The dissection was exquisite. Marcus's legacy flayed to its parasitic core, the room gasping at the precision. Liam's grin widened, his earlier tears transmuted to triumph, while Victor shook his head in quiet outrage. But Elena reserved her coup de grace, delving into the folder's innermost sanctum, a slim dossier of audio files, timestamps aligning with unguarded moments. And, for the capstone, she said, extracting her phone with the poise of a surgeon's scalpel, permit an auditory exhibit. These are inadvertent captures, business lines I monitored for client syncs, wherein Marcus, in candor's cloak, illuminates the division of dominion. His face ashen, Marcus lunged forward. Elena, no, that's private, for God's sake. But Victor's hand on his shoulder stayed him, firm. Let it play, Marcus. Truth's no thief. She connected the device to the room's discreet speakers, and the first clip bloomed. Marcus's voice, relaxed over whiskey with a fraternity brother. Look, between us, the cultural wizardry that sets us apart, all Elena. 6 languages, protocols I'd butcher, she's the engine. I just steer the parade. The second, sharper, to investors, yeah, I deflect the deep dives, loop back to her notes. She's too gracious to claim the stage, so why not? The admissions cascaded, each a dagger to his mythos, the room cycling through shock to schadenfreude. Liam's eyes widened, then narrowed in disgust, Sophia's hand flying to her mouth, Henry's face thunderous. As the final echo faded, Elena closed the folder, her gaze upon Marcus a benediction of finality. The proof stands ironclad, unyielding as the pacts I forged. Hale Heritage is no solo odyssey, but a symphony I composed, with you as guest conductor. The table erupted. Applause from Victor, sobs from Liam. recriminations from Sophia, but Elena's focus held, her proof not vengeance but vindication. The first pillar toppled in the edifice of truth. Marcus slumped, his kingdom's facade fracturing, as the woman he had diminished rose, folder in hand, to reclaim her throne. The dining room, bathed in the faltering glow of Christmas candles, seemed to contract around the ironclad proof Elena Ramirez Hale had unleashed, the air heavy with the acrid tang of exposed deceptions, mingling with the fading aromas of tagine and tamale. The folder lay open like a conquered battlefield, its documents and transcripts splayed across the damask cloth, silent witnesses to Marcus Hale's meticulously curated myth unraveling. Guests sat transfixed, their faces a mosaic of emotions. Victor Lang's jaw set in righteous indignation, Clara's eyes brimming with empathetic fire, Rita, the consultant, scribbling furious notes on a napkin. Henry Hale's scotch glass trembled in his grip, his patriarchal certainty fracturing under the weight of evidence that shamed his own legacy. Liam, his tears dried into streaks of resolve, clutched Elena's arm, his small chest heaving with the vindication of truth long buried. Sophia Hale, however, remained a bastion of denial, her pearls a lifeline she twisted between manicured fingers, her voice emerging as a quavering defense. She pleaded that this must be some misunderstanding, her gaze darting between her son and daughter-in-law like a cornered animal. Family secrets aired at dinner. It's unseemly. Marcus, surely there's context to these recordings. We can resolve this privately after the gifts. But the room's momentum had shifted irrevocably, a tide pulling away from Marcus's shore, and Elena, sensing the fracture, turned her attention to the folder's deepest vault. A crisp sheaf of legal bindings, embossed with state seals and notary stamps, their pages whispering of powers long concealed. Before private resolutions, Sophia, Elena replied, her voice a measured cadence that commanded silence. Allow me to illuminate the structure that undergirds this empire, a structure Marcus appears to have overlooked in his haste to streamline. She extracted the documents with the reverence of unveiling a sacred text, sliding them across the table toward the center where all could peruse. These are the incorporation amendments filed 3 years ago during the Asian market pivot that ballooned our valuation from 8 to 25 million. At that juncture, with investors clamoring but capital short, I advanced funds from my familial trust, a bequest from my late father's estate earmarked for ventures of cultural preservation. In exchange, the attorneys formalized my majority stake, 51% ownership, vesting complete fiduciary control. The revelation cascaded like a thunderclap in the hush, the papers passing hand to hand with the solemnity of relics in a cathedral. Victor claimed them first, his silver brows knitting as he scanned the legalese, his murmur carrying to the table. Ironclad, notarized, state-registered, Elena's the controlling interest, has been for years. Clara peered over his shoulder, gasping softly. And Marcus signed this? Willingly? Henry wrestled the stack next, his eyes bulging behind reading glasses, the scotch sloshing as he flipped pages. Son, he growled, voice thick with disbelief, you inked this, knowing it handed her the reins. Marcus, slumped in his chair, his face a mask of ashen horror, stammered a retort that dissolved into incoherence. It was a formality, Dad, temporary bridge financing. The lawyers said. Temporary? Elena interjected, her tone laced with the gentle precision of a surgeon excising falsehood. The clauses are explicit, perpetual equity, irrevocable without mutual consent, superseding operational delegations. You retain the CEO mantle for day-to-day theater, the speeches, the handshakes, but the board seat, the veto on significant motions, the asset dispositions. Those reside with me. The trust infusion wasn't alone. It was the lifeblood of our Shanghai launches, the Tokyo immersions that comprised 40% of last quarter's yields. Liam, sensing the pivot, leaned in with wide-eyed wonder. So, Mom, you're the boss? Like, the real one? The boy's innocence pierced the tension, drawing reluctant chuckles from Rita and Clara, but it crystallized the power shift. the child, witness to betrayal, now heralding his mother's ascent. Sophia's denial, cracking like porcelain under pressure, clutched the papers as they reached her, her voice whispering of dawning regret. "Elena, why hide this? All these years, letting us assume you were the supporter, the homemaker. We praised him, diminished you. God, the things I said about your little hobbies." Her eyes welled, the maternal shield buckling as she confronted her complicity, the subtle encouragements she had whispered to Marcus over bridge games and brunches. "A strong man needs space to lead, dear. Don't let her overshadow." Elena's gaze softened fractionally, the fire of revelation tempered by empathy for the woman whose worldviews had been forged in a gentler cage. "Sophia, concealment wasn't malice. It was mercy. For Marcus's confidence, for Liam's stability, for the illusion of partnership that oiled our days. But mercy has limits, and tonight they've been breached." The admission hung, a bridge extended across the chasm, and Sophia nodded, tears tracing paths down her powdered cheeks, her hand reaching tentatively across the table to clasp Elena's. "I'm sorry," she murmured, voice breaking, "for the blindness, for the barbs disguised as counsel. You've been the pillar, and we chipped at the stone." The raw and unforeseen gesture rippled through the room, thawing the frost of confrontation into something human. Clara dabbing her eyes, Henry grunting a gruff, "Well done, son." However, his gaze on Marcus held paternal disappointment. Liam squeezed Elena's free hand, his whisper fierce. "See, Mom? Even Grandma sees now." But, cornered by the shifting allegiances, Marcus surged to his feet, the chair toppling with a clatter that echoed like judgment. "This is absurd," he snarled, snatching the papers from Sophia's grasp, his fingers crumpling the edges in frantic denial. "A technicality, lawyer games. The partners courted me, my vision, my track record. Ownership be damned, I'm the face, the driver. Without my pitches, your dusty protocols gather cobwebs." He tore at the stack, as if violence could unwrite the ink, pages fluttering to the floor like fallen leaves. Victor rose swiftly, his hand clamping Marcus's wrist with boardroom authority. "Enough, Marcus. Destroying evidence won't rewrite reality. Those Asian deals? Elena's trust funded them, her networks sealed them. Sit, or I'll walk my investment out that door." The command rooted Marcus, his chest heaving, the fight draining from him as isolation closed in. His father averting eyes, his mother weeping, his son staring with newfound wariness. Elena rose then, gathering the scattered sheets with calm efficiency, her movements a counterpoint to his chaos. "Vision without foundation crumbles, Marcus," she said, stacking the documents neatly, her voice carrying the finality of a gavel. "And foundations, as you've learned, bear my signature." The room exhaled collectively, the powers unveiling not a detonation, but a dawn, illuminating the hidden levers Elena had wielded in shadow. Emboldened by the hush, Victor pressed forward, his tone shifting to opportunity. "Elena, the board's been circling this for months. Those Polynesian inquiries, they're not addenda to Hale, they're overtures to Ramirez. We've prepped a buyout of Marcus's operational slice. Clean severance, you at the helm, or, if preferred, a full pivot to your consultancy banner." The offer hung, tantalizing, a fork in the empire's road, and Clara chimed in, her voice warm with alliance. "And the UN's heritage arm, I've liaised. They're nominating you for their equity medal. Your protocols? Global template now." Liam's eyes sparkled, the terror of moments ago transmuted to excitement. Mom as CEO? With her own adventures? Elena ruffled his hair, her smile genuine amid the storm. "Perhaps, mi explorador, but empires aren't seized in fury, they're stewarded in wisdom." She turned to Marcus, her gaze not vengeful but resolute. "You've planned my excision, but the blade turns inward. Hale heritage endures, under terms that honor its true architect. Resign the facade, or face the dissolution you courted." Sophia, wiping her tears, ventured a bridge. "Elena, could there be reconciliation? For Liam, for the family we've built." Elena's expression softened further. The hidden power was not a weapon, but a mantle she chose to wear gracefully.
Reconciliation demands reckoning, Sophia. But for our son, doors remain ajar. Sensing the precipice, Marcus collapsed back into his seat, the envelope of divorce papers now a mocking relic beside her proofs. The room stirred, guests murmuring plans to depart, but the air transformed, alliances realigning, truths enshrined. As the evening fractured into hushed farewells, Elena gathered Liam close, the boy's head on her shoulder, his whisper a vow. "You're the queen, Mom. Always were." She kissed his forehead, the hidden power no longer concealed, but claimed, a force that had sustained an empire in silence, now ready to illuminate paths untrodden. Marcus watched from the shadows, his kingdom's true sovereign revealed, the weight of his miscalculations settling like snow. Not loss, but the hollow echo of a throne never truly his. The candles guttered low, but Elena's light burned eternal, a beacon for the dominion she would now rule unapologetically. The dining room, its candles now guttering to stubs that cast erratic shadows across the ravaged feast, held the weight of Elena Ramirez Hale's ironclad proofs like a courtroom after a damning verdict. The folder lay splayed open, its documents a testament to years of pilfered genius, the air still humming with the aftershocks of her unveiling. Guests shifted in their seats, the clink of silverware silenced, faces etched with a spectrum of reactions. Victor Lang's eyes narrowed in strategic calculation, Clara dabbing at fresh tears of solidarity, Rita murmuring into her phone with the fervor of a journalist scenting a scoop. Henry Hale's knuckles whitened around his empty glass, his gruff exterior cracked by the mirror of his son's hubris. Liam, nestled against Elena's side, his sobs subsided into hiccuping breaths, watched his mother with the awe of a disciple beholding revelation. Sophia Hale's whispered plea for reconciliation hung unanswered in the thickening silence, her pearls a rosary of regret clutched in trembling hands. Marcus Hale, slumped at the table head, his once commanding frame reduced to a hollow shell, stared at the scattered papers as if they might transmute back into the illusions he had spun. The divorce envelope beside them mocked his collapse, its contents now not a weapon but a boomerang returned with lethal precision. Elena, her posture unbowed, surveyed the tableau with the quiet authority of one who had long navigated tempests unseen. The proofs had dismantled the facade, but actual demolition demanded the architect's confession. Unfiltered, irrefutable, captured in the timber of betrayal itself. She reached for her phone once more. The device was calm and unyielding in her palm, its screen a portal to the unguarded hours Marcus believed private. "Before we adjourn to reflections or recriminations," she said, her voice a measured prelude that commanded the room's undivided ear, "permit one final exhibit, not my words nor legalese, but the voice that orchestrated this charade. These recordings," she continued, connecting the slender cord to the room's discreet speakers, with a soft click that echoed like a loaded chamber, emerged not from malice but necessity. Hale Heritage lines are monitored for international syncs. Client calls from Marrakesh at dawn and Maori huddles at dusk. In those interstices, Marcus spoke truths he veiled in public, candid asides to confidants who posed no threat. Marcus lurched forward, his chair scraping a protest, his face contorting in desperate salvage. "Elena, stop! This is entrapment, a violation. Those were off the record for God's sake." Victor, his ally turned arbiter, placed a restraining hand on Marcus's shoulder, the grip iron beneath velvet. "Sit, Marcus. If the words are yours, own them. The industry's small. Whispers travel faster than denials." Henry grunted agreement, his voice a low rumble. "Let it roll, son. Hiding now makes you look weaker than the truth." Sophia, torn, reached for her son's hand, but he shook her off, isolation closing like jaws. Liam, his curiosity overriding fear, straightened, whispering to Elena, "Play it, Mom. Let them hear." The first recording bloomed from the speakers, tinny yet unmistakable. Marcus's voice was laced with the easy camaraderie of a post-whiskey unwind, confiding to an old fraternity brother over a crackling line. "Look, Mike, straight talk, this empire's no solo flight. The cultural sorcery that hooks clients sets us leagues above the hacks.
That's Elena, lock, stock, and barrel. 6 languages cold, protocols I'd mangle on a bet. She juggles the nuances while I polish the pitch. I roll in for the photo ops, seal with a handshake. She's the invisible engine keeping the wheels ethical. The admission sliced the air, casual yet corrosive, stripping Marcus's mythos to its parasitic bones. The room inhaled sharply. Clara's gasp, Rita's furious scribble, Henry's muttered damnation. Liam's eyes widened, then darkened, the hero worship of his father fracturing into disillusion, his small voice piping up amid the hush. "Dad, you knew? All this time, you knew Mom did everything, and you just took it?" Marcus's head snapped toward his son, anguish twisting his features, but the recording rolled on, relentless. "It's symbiotic, Mike. She's camera-shy, thrives in the weeds. I'm the front man, the closer. Works like a charm. No one's the wiser." The laughter that followed, a low chuckle of self-satisfied collusion, poisoned the air, drawing winces from the assembly. Sophia covered her mouth, horror dawning as she confronted the deliberate duplicity her son had cultivated. The theft, not impulsive, but engineered. Elena advanced the track with clinical detachment, her fingers steady on the screen, the second clip emerging sharper, laced with the frustration of a man chafing against his own facade. "This one's fresher," she prefaced, 3 months past, to a venture capitalist probing our operational spine. Marcus's tone sharpened, defensive yet boastful, the investor's questions peeling back his veneer. "Truth, I skim the surface on those cultural deep dives. Elena's the savant, her anthro PhD, and field grinds birthing the frameworks. Clients grill me on taboos or treaties, I finesse till I ping her for the script. She's gold at it, modest to a fault, never grabs the mic. So yeah, I harvest the acclaim. Equity demands it." The words landed like lashes, each revelation a stripe across Marcus's public persona, the room cycling through outrage to pity. Victor shook his head, his voice a murmur to Clara. Calculated. He's not ignorant, he's complicit. Rita nodded, her phone now openly recording, the consultant's instinct overriding decorum. Liam turned away, burying his face in Elena's side, his whisper muffled but searing. "You're too good for him, Mom. Why stay?" Elena stroked his hair, and her response was a soft anchor. "For you, Tesoro." But chains forged in silence break loudest. The third recording, the killing stroke, crackled to life 2 weeks prior. Marcus's voice hushed in conspiratorial timbre, briefing the divorce attorney on the maneuvers. "Listen, structure this airtight. Elena's is tangled in ops, sure, but has no boardroom chops and no legal savvy. Frame the settlement plush, play the generous hubby. Shell sign blind, grief clouding her math. Key, rush the ink before she lawyered up or dug into valuations. Post-filing, challenging the split, uphill slog." The strategy unfurled, a blueprint of predation. Undervalued assets rerouted to his sole control. Her equity evaporated. The empire she birthed repackaged as his unencumbered fiefdom. His casual assurance that her supposed naivety would seal her fate hung like smoke, choking the room. Silence crashed, absolute and asphyxiating, the speakers humming faintly in the void. Marcus sat petrified, his eyes cycling through denial, terror, frantic calculus, the man who had towed the toast of triumph now drowned in his effluent. Liam broke it first, his 9-year-old voice a clarion of moral thunder cutting through the adult's stunned paralysis. "Dad, you were going to steal from Mom, from us. Lie and take everything she made." The simplicity devastated, stripping the legalese to its venal core, tears renewed in his eyes, but laced now with contempt. Rising like an avenging patriarch, Henry slammed his glass down, the shatter echoing. "Marcus, you fool! How? Your own wife, the mother of your boy. This isn't business. It's betrayal, black as pitch." Sophia, her composure shattered, turned to her son with the raw grief of a mother beholding monstrosity. "Why, Marcus? Why weave this web? We raised you better, honor, partnership. Tears streamed unchecked, her voice fracturing. Elena's been the grace in our lives, and you plan to beggar her? Marcus, voice hoarse with unraveling, reached for her hand, but she recoiled, the maternal bond fraying. Elena, he croaked, turning to her with the pleading eyes of a supplicant. We can salvage, private talks, renegotiate. For Liam, for the legacy. Elena's response was a fortress, her gaze unyielding, the voice of betrayal not hers, but his, now echoing eternally in the chambers of consequence. Salvage implies shared wreckage, Marcus, she said, her tone the finality of a door bolted against tempests. You orchestrated this theater. Public debasement, fabricated severances, papers rigged to plunder what I forged. And before witnesses, you branded me dilution, your son's world a complication to excise. She gestured to Liam, the boy now rigid with resolve, his presence the unassailable jury. Worse, you've schooled him in duplicity, that loyalty is leverage, contributions currency to coin. No private bomb heals public poison. The indictment landed, comprehensive and crushing. Marcus's edifice not just toppled, but termited from within. Victor rose, clapping Elena on the shoulder with fraternal solidarity. The boards are with you, Elena, full support for transition. Those UN nods? Accelerating. Rita chimed in, her voice brisk. And media, your story's primed. Alt interviews. The exodus began in murmurs, guests murmuring farewells laced with alliances pledged. Henry clasping Elena's hand with gruff respect. Brave work, girl. He's the fool, not you. As the door clicked shut on the last departure, the room emptied to its scarred trio. Elena, Liam, and the specter of Marcus, adrift in his unraveling. Sophia lingered last, embracing Elena fiercely. Forgive my blindness, she whispered. Call me ally, not adversary. Then, a parting lance to her son. Mend this, or lose them both. The door sealed, leaving Elena to gather her son, his head on her shoulder, the voice of betrayal silenced but indelible. Mom, Liam murmured, you're free now. She kissed his temple, the night's tempests yielding a dawn of dominion. See me, Corazon, and in freedom we rebuild, not on sand but stone. Marcus watched from the shadows, his confessions a noose self-tied, the queen he sought to dethrone now reigning supreme, her voice not his, the empire's true echo. Christmas morning filtered through the frost-etched windows of the Hale mansion, its pale light slicing the disarray of the night before, like a reluctant judge surveying a crime scene. The dining room stood in frozen tableau, half-empty plates congealed with tagine remnants, crumpled napkins strewn like battlefield flags, the divorce envelope and Elena's folder abandoned amid the wreckage, their contents a testament to the feast's actual harvest, truth over tinsel. The air hung stale, with the ghost of spiced wine and the sharper tang of shattered illusions. Outside, the snow had ceased, leaving a pristine shroud over the estate, mocking the chaos within, where foundations had crumbled under the weight of revelations. Elena Ramirez Hale stirred first, her body curled on the living room sofa, where exhaustion had claimed her and Liam in the small hours, the boy's head pillowed on her lap, his breath steady in the repose of the emotionally spent. She rose carefully, tucking a throw blanket around him, her silk robe whispering against the hardwood as she padded to the kitchen, the need for coffee a ritual anchor in the storm. The machine gurgled to life, its hiss a counterpoint to the distant clink from Marcus's study, his pacing, no doubt, a caged animal circling the bars of his miscalculation. Last night's voice of betrayal had echoed through professional networks faster than any tweet, the tourism world's incestuous vines carrying the scandal like pollen on the wind. Her phone, propped on the counter, ignited with a frenzy of notifications, the screen a digital bonfire of consequences. First, here is a terse email from their largest European client, the Alpine Heritage Consortium. Mr. Hale, following last evening's developments, we must pause our renewal. Direct inquiries to Miss Ramirez for continuity. CC, Elena at Ramirez Consults - provisional. Then the Asian pivot led to a Mandarin missive forwarded in English. Regret to withdraw Q1 commitments. Ms. Ramirez's protocols are invaluable. Your leadership is incompatible. Compensation for breach pending arbitration. Victor Lang's text followed, blunt as a boardroom memo. Pulled my stake at dawn. Boards unanimous. Your transition seamless. Polynesia pivots to Ramirez Global. Call when ready. The deluge swelled, investor pullbacks cascading like dominoes. 3 flagship partnerships vaporized overnight. A voice note from the accountant laced with panic. Elena, the valuations are imploding. Hale stock is dipping by 20% in the pre-market. Marcus's calls unreturned, media sniffing. Advise legal lockdown. She scrolled methodically, each ping a brick in the wall of Marcus's collapse. The empire he had fronted now retracting like a tide from his shore. A final alert pierced the barrage. An embargoed but leaked press release from the International Tourism Forum. Breaking. Hidden architect emerges. Elena Ramirez claims Hale Heritage helm amid founder ouster. Your story, Elena. The woman who built in shadows. Now stepping into the light. Marcus emerged from his study as the coffee brewed. His appearance a wreckage of the polished patriarch. Shirt untucked and wrinkled, jaw shadowed with stubble. Eyes bloodshot from futile dial tones and the gnaw of isolation. He paused in the doorway, the scent of Arabica a fragile bridge. His voice emerging hoarse and halting. Elena, we need to talk. About damage control, the path forward. The words carried the desperation of a man adrift, clinging to the wreckage of shared history. She poured 2 mugs without looking up, sliding one across the island toward him, her movements precise, unyielding. Damage control implies salvageable debris, Marcus. What precisely do you envision next in this narrative you authored? He gripped the mug like a talisman, steam curling between them, his gaze flicking to the living room where Liam slumbered, the boy's peaceful form a silent indictment. Last night, the recordings, the papers, it spiraled. But we built this together, the life, the legacy for our son. Surely, for Liam, we renegotiate, co-parent the company, keep the facade for stability. The pronoun we grated, a relic of entitlement, as if his coup attempt had not severed the sinews. Elena sipped her coffee, black and bitter as the truths unearthed, her eyes meeting his over the rim with the clarity of one unbound. Together? You mean the edifice I erected, brick by pilfered blueprint, while you posed as architect? The facade you sought to shatter with legalese and lies? No, Marcus. The life Liam deserves is one of authenticity, not your scripted charade. Her phone buzzed anew, insistent, drawing her glance. A message from the UN Cultural Heritage Council, forwarded via Sofia Mendez. Elena, nomination confirmed for Equity Pioneer Award. Your immersions redefined global standards. Gala in Geneva, March. The attached media packet is your emergence as Hale's true force, a case study in shadowed genius. She set the device down, the validation a quiet armor, but Marcus lunged for relevance, his voice pitching higher. See, that's us, your genius, my platform. We leverage this, spin the narrative, joint statement. The marital rough patch is a renewed partnership. Investors return, Liam sees unity. Elena laughed softly, a sound devoid of mirth, laced with the sorrow of what might have been. Unity? You publicly eviscerated me, branded our son a complication, our bond a dilution to your assent. Liam stirred then on the sofa, his eyes fluttering open, the boy's acuity pulling him to wakefulness even in repose. He sat up, blanket pooling around him, his gaze sharpening on his parents' tableau, the coffee steam a veil between fractured fronts. Mom, he murmured, patting over in socked feet, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Is Dad gone? The question, innocent yet loaded, sliced Marcus like a blade, the boy's wariness a mirror to the night's confessions. Elena drew Liam to her side, her arm encircling his shoulders, a bulwark against the chill. Not gone, me Corazon, but changes. Choices have echoes. Marcus knelt to his son's level, desperation etching his features, his hand hovering for contact, but the boy did not invite. "Liam, buddy, Dad's sorry. Last night got heated, words twisted. We fixed this, you, me, and Mom. Family first, right?" Liam's hazel eyes, so like Elena's in their depth, hardened with the clarity of unhealed wounds. "You lied, Dad. About Mom's work, about stealing it. And the papers? You wanted to take our home and make us nothing. I heard you plan it."
The directness devastated Marcus, recoiling as if struck, his voice cracking. I thought it best for growth, for us." "Best?" Elena interjected, her tone a scalpel, guiding Liam to a stool. "Best for your ego, perhaps, erasing the woman who funded your flights, forged your fortunes?" Liam, sensing the undercurrent, turned to her with solemn gravity. "Mom, does this mean we leave, start new?" The question hung, a fork in their dawn, and Elena paused, the hesitation a rare chink in her resolve, the mother's heart warring with the architect's steel. "Leaving fractures, mi vida, but staying in chains stifles. What do you see for us?" Liam considered, his small fingers tracing the mug's rim, the boy's emotional intelligence a beacon in the gloom. "I see you happy, Mom, leading, like you should, not hiding. And Dad, if he learns, maybe visits, but not bossing." Marcus's face crumpled, the final bastion breached by his son's verdict. Tears tracing paths down his unshaven cheeks. "Elena, please, for him." Elena's gaze softened fractionally, the dawn light catching the conflict in her eyes, the pull of family against the push of justice. "For Liam, bridges remain, Marcus, but trust, rebuilt on ruins, stone by honest stone. No more thrones of theft." As if orchestrated by the rising sun, her phone chimed again, a video call from Sofia Mendez, the screen blooming with the director's warm face against a Geneva backdrop. "Elena, darling, the forums are ablaze. I assure you that your story and the recordings leaked ethically to you. Nominations pouring, TEDx on shadowed leadership, Harvard case study. But you, how hold?" The unbidden yet profound support tipped the scale, Elena's hesitation dissolving into determination. Holding, Sophia, rising, actually. The call ended with alliance pledges, leaving Marcus to absorb the isolation, his empire's dawn not renewal but ruin. Liam, invigorated, hopped down, pulling Elena toward the window where snow sparkled under nascent light. "Look, Mom, the world's white again. Clean start." She nodded, the boy's resilience a salve, as Marcus retreated to his study, the door clicking like a concession. The collapse was complete, his facade felled, but in its rubble, Elena glimpsed not loss but liberation. The dawn of a dominion hers alone, built on truths unearthed, with a sun as steadfast compass. The mansion, once his stage, now echoed her ascent, the light of morning heralding not endings but empires reborn. The Hale Mansion, its Christmas morning hush shattered by the relentless ping of incoming alerts, stood as a hollow shell of faded festivity, the evergreen in the corner shedding needles like confessions onto the Persian rug. Elena Ramirez Hale moved through the living room with purposeful grace, her robe cinched tighter against the chill seeping from the frost-rimmed windows, Liam trailing her like a vigilant shadow, his small hand clasped in hers. The boy's eyes, still rimmed with the night's tears, sparkled with a mix of trepidation and thrill, the weight of their dawning freedom both exhilarating and precarious. Marcus had vanished into his study hours earlier, the door barred like a fortress against the fallout. But Elena knew better, his silence was merely the calm before a desperate lash. Her phone, now a lifeline to the world beyond his crumbling domain, buzzed with Victor Lang's latest update. Media storm building, Forbes teaser on your rise, CNN sniffing for exclusive. Locks changed on Hale servers. Your access has been elevated. Call if he stirs. She pocketed the device, turning to Liam with a reassuring smile, her voice a steady anchor. Breakfast first, mi guerrero. Pancakes with that wild berry compote from the Andean trip. His nod was eager, a flicker of normalcy amid the upheaval, but as they reached the kitchen, A muffled thud echoed from upstairs, Marcus, no doubt, pacing the confines of his unraveling kingdom. The sizzle of batter on the griddle filled the air with fleeting comfort, syrup bubbling sweetly, when Liam's voice cut through, sharp with alarm. "Mom, look, Dad's old laptop, which he hides in the attic. It's on the counter." Elena glanced over, her spatula pausing mid-flip, the device innocuous amid the morning's clutter, its screen dark but power light pulsing faintly. Curiosity, honed by years of navigating Marcus's deflections, drew her closer. She flipped it open, the boot sequence revealing a desktop cluttered with encrypted folders, HALOPs, investor drafts, severance plan. Her pulse quickened, fingers hovering before delving.